Hey, I love therapy, and in fact, I've been going to therapy since I was around 6 years old. Though I talk about therapy a lot and may interview some therapists on the show on occasion, nothing that is said in this podcast should be considered a replacement for therapy. If you are struggling, I urge you to please seek guidance from a therapist because you are absolutely worth it. Relationships, sex, and self-love. I am your host, Rachel Dalton. I hope everybody is doing well, hanging in there. My life is a lot right now. June is just going to be a fucking sprint for me. Just things happening on all fronts in my life, and I just am having to take it one thing at a time. It's really overwhelming, but I just got to keep taking one step forward, and then, June's already halfway over, so it'll be at the end soon, and then in July, I rest. But yes, with hard work also comes rewards, and some of the hard work that I have been up to over the last couple months has been making connections with other podcasters and appearing on other podcasts. And today, as I record this, my episode with the Better Yourself podcast is out. We have a conversation about men and women and sex and desire. And we explore the question, do men need sex to feel loved, and do women need to feel loved in order to have sex? Obviously a huge generalization because everybody is different, but it's funny because it's actually similar to the conversation that I had with my guest in today's interview. This old adage that women need to be relaxed in order to have sex and men need sex in order to relax. And we talked about the idea that there are these generalizations out there, but there's some truth to them. And these generalizations are out there in large part because of the way that we're socialized. So that was kind of interesting to think about in terms of the podcast that I guested on and the conversation today, how generalizations work. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the episode notes. Check that out, the Better Yourself podcast. It was really a great conversation, and you may be seeing more of that particular host on this show in the near future. I have been doing a lot of exploring. I find, I was thinking today that sometimes this podcast, the themes that I'm exploring kind of go along with what is happening in my life. And you're going to see in the next few months that I have a similar conversation or a similar thing gets brought up with my guests, which is this idea that female orgasms, are orgasms partnered versus solo different? And what kind of different orgasms are there? Partnered versus solo, clitoral versus penetrative, like lots of different combinations of the two. There are tons of different types of orgasms. Like, how does the intensity, how do they differ? Like, all of those questions. I talked about this on Reddit, actually. I made a post just wanting to get some information about people's experiences, and I wanted to know if I was weird for the way that I worked. Spoiler alert, I am not. But it's been really interesting to explore that topic and understand that how different really everyone truly is. It's miraculous, actually. I mean, we really are all little snowflakes, special snowflakes, and fingerprints, all very unique in the way that we operate sexually. So this has led me to do even more research about female pleasure and orgasms. And I found an article, and it's funny because this article is on PsychPost, and I'll again put in the episode notes, but the title is Growth Beliefs About Sexual Satisfaction May Help Couples Navigating Women's Low Sexual Desire. Study finds. The study that they're talking about in this article is actually from a journal that I used to work on at one of my old jobs, the Journal of Sex Research. So that's kind of full circle moment there. I've been in Philly for a decade, and this is something that I worked on a decade ago. So the world is small. But I definitely recommend checking it out, checking out the article and checking out the study if you can. Basically, the more open-minded that you are and dedicated to working sexually, the same way that you would in a relationship or a friendship or any type of relationship, the more dedicated you are to working and the more of a growth mindset that you have, the better your sexual satisfaction is going to be, because it never feels like the end. There's always more to explore. And that's something that is another theme that's kind of being weaved through the interviews that I'm conducting right now too. This idea that pleasure is a buffet, and there are so many different ways that you can experience pleasure, and it never ends. It's so amazing that there are so many different body parts and so many different studies and tools, and I don't know, it's all just kind of exciting. So there's no, need to get bored. Having this growth mindset, wanting to try new things, wanting to study these things, wanting to just practice with your partner. These are all things that stimulate, pardon the pun, your sexual life, both literally and mentally, and maybe emotionally, who knows. So yeah, I will definitely link that in the episode notes. It's worth checking out for sure. One other thing that I thought that I'd share, it's something that gave me a good laugh, is a TED Talk that I found called 10 Things You Didn't Know About Orgasm. And it's by someone, the speaker is Mary Roach. She is really funny. I love her sense of humor about the whole thing. Maybe someday, hey, like hashtag goals, maybe I'll have her on the show one day. If I get to that point, fingers crossed. But it really is such an incredible topic. There are 10 different facts, and it ranges from animal sex to sex. Like there have been studies that show that infants masturbate in the womb. Yeah, you just have to check it out. It's funny, it's informative, and you will definitely learn a lot more than you maybe wanted to know. But that's the fun of living, right? Always learning. All right. So I think that brings me up to date with all of the important things that I wanted to cover in the intro today. I do want to mention that, again, I mentioned this in the last episode, but the email for the podcast has been changed. It is winedine69pod@gmail.com. So that's where you can find me. Call me, beat me if you want to reach me. I think I just showed my age. Just going to leave that there. All right. So today I talk with Kristen, and we talk about authentic sexuality. We talk about age gap relationships. We talk about sacred sexuality. We talk about LGBTQ plus sexuality and how to be supportive. We get into politics a little bit. It's a complete buffet, and I mean, they have so much good information, and it's such a good conversation that we have. So I hope you enjoy it. With that, I'm going to, you know the drill, commercial break, and then please enjoy my conversation with Kristen O'Guin. So CBD is great, right? Sex is great, right? Okay, so what happens when you put the two of them together? What you get is Honeypot CBD infused personal lubricant. Created by a couple who is wonderfully in love, Dennis and Jesse, Honeypot is the perfect lube to level up your sex life. They also have an intimate romantic massage oil to get you revved up and started, called Romantic Escapades. You're definitely going to want to try these products. This wonderful couple put a ton of work into them, and if you want to learn more about them and their story, you can go ahead and visit that episode 59. Wouldn't it be great if it were 69? It really would have been. Oh well. Anyway, give Honeypot a try, give Romantic Escapades a try, and let me know what you think. You can go and learn more about them at fantasticescapades.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am here with my guest today, Kristen O'Guin. Kristen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. How are you?
I am good. I'm hanging in there. But
Good.
I just got a sudden burst of energy earlier today when I remembered that I have a recording session. I always feel a little bit better after I record. So,
Hmm.
well,
Nice.
let's get kind of started with you telling the listeners a little bit about you and what you do.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Kristen O'Guin, and I'm a sexuality uh, educator, a sacred sexuality teacher, and a sexual empowerment coach. So, it is my passion and my calling to support people in the sexual realm and all that that encompasses. So, of course, intimacy, relationships, communication, and really it ends up being all sorts of life stuff because it's all very related.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so one of the things that what does what does the sexual empowerment component look like in comparison to the sacred sexuality? How do they, kind of
Mm.
intermingle and what does that look like?
Well, tons of overlap, but with sacred sexuality, not everyone is spiritual. Not everyone is interested in spirit combining spirituality and sexuality, or if they are, um, it might be a like more of a religious lens that they're looking through, or things like that. So it's all to help empower people, but the sacred part might include things like meditation or mindfulness or visualization, and actually even in my work with non-spiritual clients or students, I still end up doing a lot of that. But with sacred sexuality, there's a lot more overt conversation about divinity and things like that. Whereas some of my clients, they might be atheist or just not interested in more of a divine lens. And so, but it's still so powerful to include things like meditation and mindfulness and breath work. And I also end up introducing a lot of my clients who come to me as a coach and not through the lens of a sacred sexuality teacher. I introduce them to a lot of these
Mm.
tools, and it's very exciting. And it just, it carries on for the rest of their lives. So definitely a lot of overlap.
It sounds like it. And, it's also, I mean, I might make the argument that sex is, maybe not all the time or for everybody, but sex is inherently spiritual.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
I mean, there's just it's life. It literally is what creates life, and there is something really really powerful about that. I know for me that whenever I have sex, I feel remarkably present, and
Mm.
for somebody whose brain goes, and I know just the type of world that we live in, everybody's going 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 going, being able to take that time to really focus in and let your body guide you. I can see it just
Yes.
having a really, really central part to that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, is that how meditation plays into that? What I mean, and I know, there are different types of things that are out there, right? There's sacred sexuality, there is tantra, which, I've heard mixed things about from different
Hmm.
people. But I mean, breath is a really big part of it, right? I mean, is that what
Hmm.
helps lead to that feeling of being present?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Meditation, breath, those definitely help um, lead to that deep sense of presence. But I do want to just respond to something you said. You know, it is so beautiful how sacred and spiritual sex is. But also, I want to just stay away from a lot of folks in the sacred sexuality world. or what people call the Tantra world, which may or may not actually be Tantra, kind of put spiritual sex on a pedestal. And I also just want to really honor and celebrate, a good quickie, or, just like some raunchy, just have some fun in the bushes or something, I feel like, and even that can be spiritual, but also I just really want to embrace all of sexuality, and just maybe come from a little bit of a different place than a lot of sacred sexuality teachers, where it's like there's a hierarchy, because for me there's like not a hierarchy. It's all valid and beautiful.
Yeah, sex is sex, and I mean sometimes you do just want something, dirty, like straight up, dirty. Sometimes you don't need to feel connected to the earth.
Right. Right.
But
sure.
I don't know. Sometimes for me, when I'm at my dirtiest, that's when I do feel the most connected.
Oh,
Interesting how that happens, isn't it?
For sure. Yeah.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the relationship between like the body, the brain, and the heart. Because I know that a lot of people, those are like the three big components of self, at least, in my brain. It's brain, body, heart. And whenever I'm trying to make a decision, if those three things align, I know that it's like definitely the right decision.
But beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. Like it's just kind of, if one of those things feels a little bit off, I know that I need to like reframe something, or maybe like, that might not be the right thing for me. So that's kind of always been my goalpost, my guide. Are my brain, body, and heart in alignment? And if not, then I need to examine that. But in terms of like sex, how does that play into this idea of sacred sexuality?
Well, definitely bringing consciousness to all these different aspects and what's going on, and being present with these different parts of the self. So for example, the brain, and also, I'm curious if you mean more specifically like the physical brain and or the mind.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a lot of overlap there too.
There is. It's so, as the older I get, the more I just realize that everything is so much more nuanced than I thought that it was when I was a kid. But yeah, like I guess I do mean like the mind, like, the mind always racing. Your mind can lie to you, with anxiety and all of those things.
Absolutely. One of the biggest obstacles to a lot of women and other people who've been socialized as female in our society to great sex is being stuck in their heads and not having a connection to their bodies during sex, not knowing what they want or what they like or what they don't want. And, when we can let the body and the mind communicate more fluidly, then that focus can come down into the body, and then the body can help inform the mind about, what the person wants, doesn't want, etc. And even just like going to the physical brain, there are so many chemicals that are happening with sex, with infatuation, and if we can be more conscious about what's going on physiologically with these very powerful and sometimes very intense chemicals, then, just bringing consciousness to what's going on can help us, for example, in decision making, or, just knowing what's right for us, things like that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how my brain thinks when it comes to that. And that alignment when you are having sex. What advice do you have for people when they're having a hard time getting all of those things kind of lined up?
Yeah. So, dropping into the body and letting the body take over a little bit more than the brain is especially good for women. Now, sometimes we do need the mind or the brain to help in our processes, our sexual experiences, certainly making decisions, or, even for fun, like with fantasies and such. But Just anyone, and it's not just women, lots of people, especially in our modern lifestyle, are stuck in their heads. So, one easy way that is always available to people is to bring your focus to your breath and just start tuning into the breath going in and out of your body. Another pretty simple thing to do in the moment to get more into the body is to notice points of contact between yourself and the other person. Or, if you're by yourself, between your fingertips and, whatever body parts you're touching. I'm really a fan of mindful touch, where your presence is involved in every little tiny bit of touch that happens. And just putting your focus on your breath, the physical sensations you're feeling in your body, the points of contact where your body is touching someone else's body, or one part of your body is touching another part of your body. Just dropping in that way can be so helpful.
Yeah, I think sometimes just get so stuck in the head. And I love that you mentioned, just completely being present in the body and letting go. I feel like that doesn't happen very frequently, to me at least. But, when it does, I feel like a sex goddess.
Yes, absolutely. And,
I'm just like, yeah.
it can be a practice. And just like having that intention to, over time, get better and better at quieting the mind. Also, I love to recommend to folks to relax before sex. Especially, there's a saying, women have to relax to have sex, men have to have sex to relax. And, a huge generalization, but also some truth to it. And I think a lot of that is just about how we've been socialized and conditioned. I don't know that it's an inherent thing, but, just taking, and I've worked with men too, who are just extremely intelligent, extremely analytical, and just helping them to take 20 minutes to relax before sex, or helping a lot of women just take 20 minutes, relax your body. Mutual massage can be really good for that. Hey, let's take 15 minutes and massage each other. Or,
heck yes. Yeah.
like a warm bath, or actually just moving, putting on some music, gyrating the hips, get those hips loosened up, or if you like yoga, meditation, it can just be such a profoundly different experience if you take, if you need more getting into your body, then taking that time to relax for a little bit before you're sexual can help that happen.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think foreplay is actually a broader term than a lot of people think it is, right? Because what you're talking about is a form of foreplay. And I think maybe a lot of people might not understand that, because they think of foreplay as maybe, going down on somebody, or, making out. And those are valid forms of foreplay as well. But I mean, you've heard the phrase, I imagine, that the woman's most important sexual organ is her brain.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
And I think that what you're talking about are tactics to potentially slow down the brain a little bit, so that it's in a better place to be able to have better sex, really.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
And you work, I mean, so, we talked a little about your experience. You work with women, and you also work with men. And I guess we're kind of getting into that territory a little bit. How does that work with men work? I mean, how do you approach it? Is it, you just talked a little bit about, taking this time to relax. I mean, are there certain things that you have to teach men about women? And obviously these are huge generalizations that we're using, right? Like,
we can speak to some degree in generalizations because we've all received programming around sex that is hugely generalizing. It really focuses on, heterosexual sexuality and relationships, and, people who are socialized as male get some of the, over and over and over again, some of the same messaging that is different from a lot of the messaging that people get who are socialized as female. So, there are these sexual scripts that so often people are just playing out like a script for a movie. They're just kind of going through, and it's the same over and over again because that's what we've been taught sex is. So the truth of the matter is, everyone has their own authentic sexuality, and it varies so much from person to person, and you can't generalize authentic sexuality, but there is a lot of, there are a lot of repeat common issues that, men have or that women have based on the messaging that we've all gotten.
Yeah, that's definitely fair and a good thing to point out. And that's good. I mean, I always am like, I don't want to speak in generalizations, but you're 1000% right that the reasons that those generalizations are there are because of societal conditioning.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what does that look like for when you are working with male clients then?
Well, so one of the things I love doing with men is supporting them in knowing how to be better lovers to women.
Love
and
that.
I mean, and I'll just tell you, the first step to being a better lover to anyone is to have a healthy, depthful connection with yourself and your own sexuality and your own body. So that's where I start.
Definitely.
And then, but also, it's just so helpful for men when they can get information and knowledge. And it's like there's so much pressure on men to already be these amazing lovers and already know what they're doing. And so they're not talking to each other. Women talk to each other a lot more about sex.
Yes.
Men don't really have those sorts of spaces. I try to create spaces where men can talk to each other. I've left rooms and been like, okay, you guys talk, it's like, but it's this rough, locker room talk is kind of the best that they get. And so, men and some men feel too, prideful to seek support. But those men who do come to me over and over again, they're the best lovers. They're already better lovers a lot of times than the average person because they are willing to be vulnerable and ask for support. And we need to give men permission and encouragement to do that more often. But, definitely everything, I'll, share with them everything from connecting with themselves to, anatomy, teaching them the real size of the clitoris, for example.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's huge.
Right. Yes. So, and like how you can use that and, just giving them ideas. But a lot of it too is like helping people to connect to their authentic sexuality and their body. So yes, I will share, some techniques and logistical information and sacred knowledge and things like that, but also helping them to just connect with their own body's wisdom and their authentic sexuality. And that can help guide them to be a better lover, in so many ways.
Yeah. And, it's over the last, I'm dating a new partner for the last 6 months. And it really is, he's just different than my past ones. He is way more emotionally intelligent. And it is astounding to see how that translates, right?
Oh, yeah.
It translates to the bedroom really, 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 really well.
Yes.
So I want that for women's sake, but also for men's sake, because I've been thinking just a lot more about like the pressure that we put on men, because I feel like, there's a lot of stuff out there right now, and rightfully so, right? Rightfully so. There's a lot of stuff out there about how there's the orgasm gap and how women have been, it's really easy for men to have orgasms just physically. Again, generalization. And it's a lot harder for women. Less than 25% of women come from penetration alone.
Right. Yes.
And so there is a lot of discussion about the orgasm gap, but there is, and, you know, I ran an episode a number of weeks ago where I talked with a guest about a lot of pressure that men feel to perform.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, first of all, let's just all take the word perform out of our sexual
Right.
vocabulary. There
Yeah.
is so much pressure on men around this. And, you know, also related is, you know, the size of their penis and so much
Mm-hmm.
self-judgment or, you know, and just letting men off the hook for also giving women orgasms. Because here's the thing.
Yes.
Men do not give women orgasms. A woman's own body gives her an orgasm. Now, men can assist, and that is a very special and important role. But, you know, it's actually the woman's orgasm, and it's healthier if she feels responsibility for her own orgasm. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's healthier for both people, and it's just more accurate, you know. And so men don't have to try to quote make women come. They don't have to stay erect all the time. They don't have to have uh, any particular size of penis. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just like letting them off the hook in all these ways so that, you know, everybody's having better sexual experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's, you know, I've been very, very focused on, you know, putting women's pleasure at the forefront because it's been so neglected for such a long time.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
we cannot forget about the pressures that men experience as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad that you're, you know, doing that work to bring more attention to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing that you do, and, you know, we've talked very much thus far in the binary of men and women,
Mm-hmm.
but you also support individuals who are part of the LGBTQ plus community,
Yes.
and work with people surrounding ethical non-monogamy. So, you know, we touched on the binary, but I do not want to neglect the people outside of the binary. So, talk to me a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about your work there.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, for all of my peeps who are listening who are LGBTQ plus, just want to say I'm queer, and I'm also agender slash non-binary. And yeah, I'm really excited actually that we have all this language nowadays, and a lot more support for folks who are outside of the sexual boxes nowadays. Um, you know, one thing that uh, comes to me is parents of trans teenagers who are about 17 or 18. That's a newer thing in our society. Like we're going through some sort of gender revolution here, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, so a lot of times, generally, it's parents who understand that, you know, they feel called to support their kid, but it's also might be hard for them to understand, um, and or completely accept or know how to work with things like that. So I do that. I've done a little bit of work uh, working with at a medical school. Actually, when I was in Philly for grad school, I worked at Philadelphia College of Osteopathic
Oh,
Medicine
okay. Mm-hmm.
and worked with some of the students and the faculty and staff. I also worked at University of Pennsylvania, especially with the Wharton Business School, and worked with folks on just how to better support students or patients or staff who are LGBTQ plus. I love doing that kind of work. I love helping folks who care know how to better support LGBTQ plus folks, and also just uh, sharing information with people from this lens. You know, it just can be so tiring and taxing to explain all the time and try to educate people all the time. And I have, you know, I appear pretty hetero to people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so um, I haven't experienced a lot of oppression for being queer the way that so many other folks have. And
Yeah.
also, same, when it comes to my gender identity, I don't appear in a way that people even really know a lot of the time. So for someone like myself who doesn't experience a lot of discrimination and oppression, I want to be a voice, just helping others to better just understand and learn about these things.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like you can, I'm trying to be like delicate with my language here, but like it's almost like you can like be more of a liaison because you have that understanding,
Yes.
but people are less judgmental, which is shitty, right? Like it's shitty that
Yes.
there's judgment at all,
Mhm.
but because of, the fact that your appearances might not match the stereotype,
Mhm.
it means that you're in a position to be able to do that, which I mean
Yeah.
is really, we've come so far with a lot of areas. I feel like, being gay, being lesbian, are way more acceptable, I guess. It's
Yeah.
even weird to think that,
Fortunately.
gay marriage was just legalized like less than a decade ago. It's wild to
True.
me.
Yes.
But the focus has definitely shifted, right? It's almost like, and
Yeah.
not to
Yeah.
get political, but like human rights are political. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, it's almost like the right has shifted their attention from, okay, well, we lost the battle against, gay marriage, so we're gonna, turn our eye of Sauron onto trans rights.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when I came out in the 90s as queer, at the time I said bisexual because you were either straight, gay, or
Right.
bisexual.
Right.
And that was like the best one that I had at the time.
Sure. Sure.
You know, we the that was right around when Matthew Shepard was murdered. It
Oh,
was
wow. Yeah.
it was a lot more hardcore, a lot more dangerous, um, and a lot more overt oppression and discrimination against gay folks. And at the time, we didn't even really have hardly any trans folks that were very out at all,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and we did not have a lot of the language that we have now about gender identity, which is so exciting. But, it's interesting because when I came out in the 90s, now with trans teenagers, I'm hearing exactly the same sentiments that people said about gay people back then. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, here we go again. A lot of the same comments and attitudes. And yeah. But I feel like, yes, we have absolutely been getting better and better the past several decades as far as queer folks. And, I'm sure that will happen with folks who are also outside the gender boxes. Not fast enough, but, I know we're going to get there at some point.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love that faith, and I love too that you are. It's great. I mean, you have these different coaching services for women's pleasure. You have different coaching services for men's pleasure and helping men to understand women a little bit better. And you have services for people who are not part of that binary. So I really do love that you cover it all, and that it seems like your approach to everybody is very individualized.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the heart of the matter. Like really, I'll take what you come with, and then we'll unpack all that baggage, and then we'll get you down to your authentic sexuality. And it's so precious to see these beautiful parts of people that they oftentimes have to go through get through a lot of shame or guilt or just tons of stuff around sexuality. But just for example, when I have like someone who is transitioning gender wise, and they just need a cheerleader, maybe someone to give them some practical information, someone to work out all the emotions and talk about, the coworker or the boss who wants to fire them or whatever. And then we just get to the heart of this person, and it's just a beautiful unfolding.
Yeah, and I love that authentic sexuality, and I think that there are so many umbrellas under that. I mean, it's spiritual sexuality, is, can be a form of authentic sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
But, also to get a little bit personal for a minute, I mean, you yourself, and you can talk about this as openly as you want to, as much or as little detail. You're in an age gap relationship,
Yes.
and you have practiced non-monogamy for quite a while. Like, how does that play into authentic sexuality, like for you individually or for others who, may be in similar situations?
Mm. Well, yeah, as far as the age gap relationship that I'm in, I never really thought of me when I would think of that. My partner is 17 years younger than me. And when we met, he was 24 and I was 41. And we met on Match. It was his first day of online dating ever. And he found me within a few hours. We've been together for almost 5 years now. And, and he reached out to me. He's like, I see that I'm outside your age range, but I'm an ambitious young man. And I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to give me a chance.
Oh.
And, and I was still, this is when I was off island for a few years in Philly in grad school, like I mentioned. And so I was still making new friends and, I was like, sure, that sounds fun. We can go out and do stuff and whatever. So we went on our first date and then he called me the next day and we're chatting and he's like, okay, well, I just want to ask you a question. What are your intentions with me? And I was like, oh, new friend with benefits, and and he's like, okay, well, that's cool. Well, I just want you to know I want a relationship with you. And I was like, oh, that is so sweet. But there is no way I could even consider that possibility because you're 24, But it's, it's like he is just a very mature person and his being, his heart, his soul, his mind matches mine. And, just we're so able to be our authentic selves. And it's just such a great, beautiful fit. A lot of times I think, the relationship that we actually need or, our sexuality isn't necessarily what we expected.
I think that that's really, really true. Yeah. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's very, very true. And it's funny how we like condition ourselves or make these rules for ourselves
Yeah,
around
yeah.
what we need. Or, people have lists for, again, stereotypically, women have
Mm-hmm.
lists for
Mm-hmm.
what they want in a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good to know what you want, right? Like, but more
Yeah.
importantly than having these lists is having a really strong sense of your values.
Yes, I agree.
That's
Mm-hmm.
something that I've been really honing in on the last year of my life is really getting a sense of what I value in myself and what I want in the people around me. And so,
Mm.
if that person doesn't look like what I thought that they were going to look like, it might take some time to, work through that. But ultimately, you can't throw something, really good that works and fits away just because it doesn't, look the way that you thought it would.
Yeah, yeah. I can, speaking of non-monogamy, so I had been consensually non-monogamous for many, many years. I do feel like that is my natural inclination. It's not for everybody, but it's a beautiful part of me. And but the thing is, when you're non-monogamous, the dating pool is way, 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 way smaller because you have to,
Yes.
especially if you're looking for a longer term partner. So, um, so I got to a point in my life where, I hadn't been with any partners that I wanted to stay with long term, and I was wanting that. And so I felt like I was to a place in my life where I could be monogamous for a while, years, and I was, considering that to kind of much, much more broaden the dating pool. And also, I was so tired of doing it with people who it was their first time with non-monogamy.
Yeah.
Initially, I loved being in that role. It was I loved showing people this whole other world, like just out of the, just there are so many more options than they realized. But then it was like, I mean, for how to do relationships, but
Right. Yes.
but then it just got so tiring, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot do it again with a first timer. So then I was like, well, I feel like I'm to a point where I could do monogamy at least for quite some time. So when I met my current partner, he had never heard of ethical or consensual non-monogamy. His only experience was with seeing people cheat. And so, he had a lot of negative connotations about it. And so that was my first time in, at least 20 years of being monogamous, initially for the first year or two of our relationship. And I told him, but at some point I might want to be non-monogamous. So you have to know that up front, and over time, and I was just like, if you want to explore, I'll stay monogamous and you just feel free to explore. And
okay. That's an interesting way of approaching it. Yeah.
Oh, yes, because one thing that people don't realize is that so often when someone goes outside of a primary relationship, or whatever you want to call it, though primary is not the word for everybody, but when somebody goes outside of the relationship, so often what they experience is even more love and attraction for their partner. It's like, it just happens all the time. And I wanted my partner to have that experience of like, you don't need to worry about me going off and becoming more interested in someone else. That can happen, or that can happen in monogamous relationships as well. But, I'm actually really excited about commitment. And, I've waited a long time to find the right person to share a commitment with. And, and also you're almost surely going to have this experience of going outside the relationship and then just feeling more love and more turn on for me. And that is not at all to lessen or speak any less of our experiences with other people, or people outside those main relationships.
Sure.
Those are very beautiful as well, but it's just not the threat that so many people think it is. And of course, with those other relationships, then over time, they also grow in depth and bond as well. But yeah, to say a bit about that.
Yeah, and that's, I think I have similar. I've done a few podcasts with guests discussing non-monogamy, and although I don't think it's for me, I have really, really opened my brain more to the idea that, like, not for myself, but in general, and seeing really how it can work. I think that in my experience and what I've seen on dating apps is basically, again, a generalization, but men using it as an excuse to just it's not done mindfully, and it's done as an excuse to just be able to fuck whoever they want.
Yes.
I've also seen situations where men and like a man has like decided that they want to do it for that reason, and then the woman ends up getting way more sex than he does, and the relationship ends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to call, you may have heard the term polyfuckery.
I haven't, but that's really funny.
Yeah, it's not polyamory, right? Amory is about love. But, and for myself, I actually don't feel polyamorous specifically. Consensual non-monogamy is such an umbrella term, and there are lots of different ways to do it. But there are so many people who are not doing it well. And a big part of that is just because we don't have role models. We don't have ways, it's a lot of pioneering that's going on. And so hopefully that's another area where, again, I didn't even know that there were non-monogamous people when I realized myself that I was non-monogamous.
Right.
It was in the 90s again. And, the word polyamory wasn't even coined until like the earlier mid 90s. And so a couple years later, after I realized this about myself, I ran across this word and I was like, oh my gosh, there are other people like this. Like, this is a thing, And so to see where we've come now, where it's just so much more in the mainstream awareness, and I feel like all these things we are going to get better. Yeah.
It definitely has been good though for me, and I hope for listeners and just in the media to hear more about ethical non-monogamy and how it really can be done. Like it really can. And it's not for everyone. People may try it and realize that it's not for them. But I think that for a very long time, I had a very like judgmental view that it never works. It's again, one of those things that people use as an excuse to just fuck around, but it can actually work. There's never a relationship where two people want it. These are like beliefs that I had, maybe up until a few years ago when I really started talking to people on the podcast. So, if my mind can change, then I know that other people's can too.
Well, I deeply, deeply appreciate that because, it is a very sensitive topic for so many people. And even if, I've had plenty of experiences where somebody just knows or finds out that I'm non-monogamous. Not that I keep it a secret, but also I may not have had a reason to mention it,
Right.
But then I mention it and, oh my gosh, like I've had a lot of people get mad at me. And, I have to kind of like, explore that with them. Like, I'm not forcing you to do anything,
Right.
you go, be monogamous, right on, but it's like, it is just such a trigger, for people. And I am sensitive to that. I do want to be sensitive to that, but also it can sting, when people are just super like, kind of lash out at you because their own triggers. And
right.
Again, I do want to hold as much safe space for people to have their sexual triggers as much as possible, because letting those things come up is a great way to help heal and, to learn more. But yeah, just like when people are willing to open their mind to the possibility that maybe it's not this horrific thing that you thought it was, I just deeply appreciate it.
Yeah. And that's the thing about all of these things surrounding sex and relationships, right? And kind of, the point that we've kind of been circling around today, which is like your relationship, your sexuality doesn't need to look like anybody else's. You can work with yourself, you can work with your partner on how to have a rich, fulfilling sexual life, no matter what that looks like for you.
Yes.
And it might not work for, your next door neighbor, but that doesn't really matter. And I think that there's so much shame surrounding this idea that your desires or your relationship or your personality, like all of it needs to look like everybody else's. But I think we need to push against that, because that's just not the world we live in anymore, nor should it be.
Yeah. Yes. It is so liberating for people to be able to be themselves. And, this area of our humanity, sexuality, it just has a tremendous amount of baggage. And so when people liberate themselves sexually, it ripples out into every area of their life.
Definitely. And there's so much out there. The internet is full of, it's full of a lot of really god awful things, but it also is full of so much good information, There's so much to learn. And I think that's like just a big thing that I'm coming to learn too, is just keep your mind open.
Yes.
You never know, but
especially to yourself. The number of people who come to me so concerned about something about their sexuality. You just think it was the worst thing in the world. And then they tell me what it is. And it is super common. It is no big deal. And, it's just, yes, keep an open mind to sexuality in general, how it should look, and also especially towards yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that, Kristen, do you have any last words that you want to share? Anything that we didn't cover today that you think is important for people to know, either about you or the work that you do?
Well, definitely, I really want to encourage people to reach out for support because, so many folks are going their whole lives carrying around burdens sexually and missing out on more deeply connecting with this part of themselves and others. And, if it's okay to get support, it's really healthy, just like all these other aspects of our humanity that we get support for. And, just communication. Like if I could just throw out one thing that I would love to leave people with is say the things you are thinking. If someone's, sucking on your nipple, you're like, I hate having my nipples messed with. It's okay to let them know. You're like, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm not really into having my nipples messed with, but if you would do that over here on my neck, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Just things like that.
Communicating, you can communicate your needs and be kind.
Yes. And it's okay and healthy for people to have needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, do you want to take some time to let people know where they can find you, where they can, sign on to work with you, keep up with everything that you're doing?
Sure. Yes. Well, the best place is my website, and it's just myname.com. So it's KristenO'Guin.com. It's KristenO, G as in George, UIN as in Nancy, and KristenO'Guin.com. This is my calling. This is my passion. I love when people reach out to ask me questions or ask for support. So please do. This is my service. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, and thank you for everything that you do to try to make sure that people are living their most authentic sexual lives. It's the Lord's work.
It sure is. Hallelujah.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. Definitely be sure to check out Kristen at KristenO'Guin.com. Keep up with everything that's going on over there. And you have been listening to Wine, Dine, and 69. I am your host, Rachel Dalton, and let's keep talking.